Hello, everyone. I have another special guest today. His name is Paul Lesko. If you haven't been following him on Twitter, I highly recommend you do. It's simply Paul_Lesko. And you know what? I'm just going to let you kind of describe your Twitter feed, Paul, and what you talk about on it. First of all, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
No, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So yeah, just give your best explanation of what you generally like to talk about on your Twitter feed.
Sure. So I am a lawyer by trade. I've been practicing law since 1999, and I started off in the intellectual property area, doing trademarks, patents, copyrights, things along those lines. And I've been a card collector on and off in my childhood, and then started again in about 2008. Started collecting cards again. And when I was doing it, I realized there is so much law involved in cards, trademarks, rights of publicity, copyrights. There were some patents that were at issue. There's just so many legal issues that are there. And as a litigator, my whole job is to try to take complex subject matters and distill it and explain it to a jury, because you're not going to win any cases unless you can explain stuff to a jury. So I really, found this way of combining trading cards and litigation and legal issues to just to blog about it. And it's to explain to people, here's, sure, there's a lawsuit going on, but here's really what the lawsuit's about. Other than they filed a lawsuit, they're asking for $5 million. Here's really the nuts and bolts of it. Because I lawyers think of themselves really as educators, because that's what they're trying to do. And I just really want to bring more of a love for trading cards to people, so they can see what the legal issues are, why companies have their contracts, what are some of the downsides to what they're doing. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I love how you will actually find these court documents pertaining to these cases involving these hobby entities and explain it in a way that's both humorous and also kind of gives us clarification of what's really written in these documents. Because as a lot of people know, when it comes to these legal documents, a lot of it is written in such a way that makes it difficult for a lot of people to understand it unless you've gone through law school and whatnot. And I think that's obviously for a reason. But I love that you do that on your Twitter feed, especially when it comes to these really interesting and sometimes strange cases involving some of our big hobby entities out there.
Yeah, all these documents, they're written in legalese, and it's how I start off every morning. I have a number of databases that I look at. Before I dive into work, I'll look at all the lawsuits that I know that are out there. I look for new ones. I find the documents. That's my cup of coffee, reading other people's cases and other people's lawsuits, blogging about it, getting into the mood, then stopping and going to work.
You have a really funny way of starting your day. Yes. No. Let's go back and talk about your interest in the hobby. You spoke briefly about it, how you got kind of back into it in 2008. So what are the sports and what are the things about the hobby that you have enjoyed the most, and why you kind of picked up this interest in it, not just from a legal standpoint, but just as a collector?
Sure. So I started collecting in the 80s. I've been doing this for a while. And baseball was my main focus. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, so I was a big Cubs fan. My parents, however, were from St. Louis, Missouri. So they were big Cardinals fans. So I'm an odd breed where I like both the Cubs and the Cards. And so, but I've always had a big draw towards baseball. And that's really when I started collecting again in 2008. I started collecting baseball cards again. And I really did it because we just had, my wife and I just had our two sons. And I wanted to get something to memorialize, the year that they were born. So I got a 2006 set for my eldest and a 2008 set for my youngest. But when I did it, I realized card collecting had changed so much from when I was a kid. I mean, there were cards with autographs on them. You had memorabilia cards, and I was instantly hooked again. And unfortunately, I didn't have a collecting focus at that time. So I was flailing and I was buying prospects here and Cardinal sets here. And I really didn't have a focus. But when I started tweeting about cases and writing articles about cases, that's really what crystallized what I wanted to collect. So what I do now is I really collect cards that are involved in lawsuits. It's my goal at some point to have every card that was ever involved in a lawsuit. And unfortunately, as I was joking around with my wife, I'm like, these aren't money-making cards. And, sure, there are some cards in lawsuits that are worth a lot, but most of these, I have a hefty collection of counterfeit cards, and those aren't worth anything. So,
okay, so from my standpoint, and I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but it feels like there have been quite a few cases brought up lately, more so than. I mean, I don't know if there's been an actual, like, if you've done statistics on this in terms of if there's an increase of cases being brought to courts across America regarding card companies as well as certain individuals that are, influencers or people high up in the card community. One I'm thinking of in particular is Leaf. I feel like there have been a lot of cases brought up regarding Leaf, whether it's against them or whether it's them involved in a case somehow. It seems like a lot more than maybe there used to be, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm misremembering, and maybe it's just a function of more people talking about it on social media than there used to be. But so, what are your thoughts regarding like Leaf? Are there more and more cases being brought against them for a reason, or is this kind of the normal thing that's happened regarding the card companies for a while?
Yeah. So, one of the reasons I like cards and I write here is it is a very litigious industry. I seriously started covering about 2010 and 2011, and that was really the peak of litigation. At that time, Upper Deck was the most litigious company that was out there, and it was pretty close to them that Leaf started too. And as Leaf is, they came in, they're a newer entrant into the market. They don't have any of the exclusive licenses. They have to, push the boundaries a little bit. So that's why you see Leaf is involved in quite a few lawsuits. But also, their leader, Brian Gray, he likes to push the envelope also with bringing lawsuits. And that was, last year he brought a great lawsuit that I thought was well overdue. CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys had not signed any of their autographed cards for a while. And this is a common problem in the hobby right now with redemptions, where it takes too long for redemptions to be fulfilled. And Leaf was the first company to actually sue an athlete. No other company has done that and would do that because they think it's slitting their throat. They don't want to sue some athlete, and then he talks to all of his other athletes or talks to his agent, and then people stop signing with him. So, Leaf took the risk, brought the lawsuit, and then within a week, they actually were able to resolve that case, get the signed cards in, and then ship them off to the customers. So that's why you see a lot of lawsuits with Leaf. And as to is there more litigation now than there was? This is 2022 was a busy year. January of 2023 looked like it was going to be a busy year, but it's kind of tailed off a little bit. But there's always a good stream of cases going on in the hobby.
Yeah, I keep thinking to myself, man, they must spend so much money on general counsel at companies like Leaf and Panini and whatnot. I couldn't imagine. Again, Leaf, they had that really interesting thing that happened with the soccer player. Is it Ronaldinho? Is that how you say his name? That went
I've been
back
butchering
and
it
forth.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah,
it's. And I think every time I pronounce his name, I do it different. Ronaldinho is the best I can do with it.
Right.
Ronaldinho. That's how it's spelled. That's not how it's said.
Yeah.
But that's another interesting one too, because that was a lawsuit originally that Leaf brought. Leaf brought the lawsuit. It's called a declaratory judgment action, which is basically a lawsuit where you're not bringing it for money. you're bringing it for the court to rule basically sometimes on a contract and say, hey, we're in the right. This guy's harassing us. Tell him we're in the right. And so they brought a lawsuit against him saying, hey, we have this contract. He's saying that, we have that some of the cards we're offering aren't his signatures, but they are. And we have this contract. So, please, judge, weigh in and say, hey, there's a contract, and tell us to leave him alone. So then he countersued and alleged that the cards, the autographed cards that Leaf was selling with his autograph on there were forgeries. And that was, their counterfeit. And that's just really, really up the game. But like I was saying with Leaf, with Brian Gray, he got on Twitter that same day and posted a picture of him signing Leaf autographs. So it's one of those things where normally in a lawsuit, you normally don't see stuff like that. You'll see what the plaintiff does, then you'll see what the defendant does, then 4 months later, you'll see what the plaintiff does. So that's one of those unique things about this industry is you've got there's a couple of personalities that are in the industry that don't mind, sharing their opinions or their evidence even online. So that's what makes it always exciting.
Well, yeah, like you said, Brian Gray is an interesting character and doesn't mind bringing the fights to the public when it comes to some of these things. And he is definitely an interesting follow on social media for that reason, although he recently kind of said that he was going to stop talking about his actual company on social media and stop bringing these things out to the public. So in a way, it's kind of sad if we don't see some of these things out in public from him, if he's actually going to kind of stop discussing these things on his social media feeds.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be back. I think he has quit. I think he's quit Twitter before. So I'm sure he'll be back at some point.
Yeah, what was it? It was because of the autograph from the Buffalo Bills safety. Was that the culprit this time around that people got onto him about? And he's just like, you know what, I'm just going to get off for a while, but we'll see. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Because I think he was offering a card where they're donating some of it to charity, and people thought, well, you need to give it all to charity. It was some weird.
Yeah. So you mentioned talking about counterfeit cases a while ago. There is a really strange, interesting counterfeit case that you've been talking about recently regarding the Pornhub site, I believe. Yeah. Why don't you just go ahead and explain that?
Yeah, that's really a funny case that was brought to my attention recently, where there is a company called Bang Bros, and they had some cards where they had scantily clad women on there. And what was funny about the cards is that they were using Panini designs or Topps designs, and then they were using Panini and Topps trademarks. And the one that really caught my attention, and I'm going to get legal nerd on you here, is they had some cards that said Rated Rookie. And that's one of Panini's premier trademarks. I mean, that's one of the ones that you really want to collect. And so there are these Bang Bros cards that had Rated Rookie on there. But then if you flipped it over on the back, it said X-Rated Rookie on there. And why this fascinated me is because, so you have in trademarks, there is a valid defense to trademarks for parody. And I'm like, wow, that's actually kind of a fun parody. But then you also have a claim for what's called trademark dilution, where if somebody ruins a trademark so that they do whatever they do with it and forever have tarnished how the trademark works. So here, and this kind of did it in my mind. Now, whenever I see a Panini Rated Rookie, the first thing I kind of think of is, oh, X-Rated Rookie, ha, 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 ha. So there's these legal issues that are out there where whoever created these cards, it might not actually be Bang Bros. It might be somebody else who's even knocking them off. They have a good potential parody defense. Whereas Panini, if they would bring a lawsuit, has a great trademark infringement and dilution defense. And it's just so I'm hoping at some point we see some litigation out here, because I don't just write about or collect cards that are involved in lawsuits. I'll also like ID ones that I think have legal issues, which might be potential problems. And this is one of those ones where I'm like, oh, there's some potential problems out here. I would really like to see fireworks, because 18 months down, I would like to see how does trademark dilution go versus a parity defense. It's just as a lawyer, as an IP lawyer, you dream of stuff like that.
Okay, so my first thought, of course, is, so for your research on that, and then you say you like to go out and try and buy cards involved in some of these cases. So what does your Google search and eBay search look like right now? And do you have to explain that to your family?
It's completely ruined, because when I was doing the searches for the cards to see what trademarks they infringed and everything else, I was searching for Bang Bros on eBay. So then I was getting stuff like, we recommend, these, other porn things. I'm like, oh no, it ruined my eBay forever. And then these cards aren't inexpensive. They were going for $40, $50, $60, $80, $100 or more. And so I was watching and losing multiple auctions, because I'm like, I'm not going to spend $20 for these cards. Thankfully, a kind follower of mine had an extra one of these cards. I was able to buy it from him for $15. So now, we'll see how long it takes to get my eBay searches back to normal. But yeah, it's kind of disappointing now.
Oh my goodness! I also keep thinking to myself, if that case ever actually did get to court somehow, what would the case exhibits have to look like? They have to have lots of.
It'll be phenomenal.
But also, kind of talking a little bit more about these trademark infringements with these card companies, and like things about the designs or logos and things like that. It's an interesting sort of gray area that's been going on for a while, and this has probably been going on forever, honestly, in terms of the people like to do custom cards for one, and there's, I guess, probably a lot of debate about whether or not those things should be considered custom cards or they should be considered just straight off forgeries. And then just, I don't know, like there seems to be a lot of borrowing, to put it nicely, of popular insert sets or popular logos or labels. I'm thinking about, like, there's a lot of sort of kaboom type looking knockoffs that are out there and actually getting sold at card shows and online. So where do you think? What do you think is the fine line of somebody doing something that's either sort of in the line of being a parody or sort of in the line of it's a custom thing that they're doing and they have the right to do it, as opposed to, no, these are probably straight up forgeries and these card companies should be fighting hard or harder than they are, perhaps they are fighting them, who knows, to make sure these things don't happen.
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's been more and more of that recently. Starting in 2020, Topps released Project 2020, and in that they had a number of artists that were reimagining Topps IP, and that kind of brought a lot of artists into the hobby to create their own cards. But it also brought in a lot of knockoff artists to also do their cards. And when you're looking at copyright infringement, and that's one of the easier issues to look at, there is a defense called the fair use defense. Unfortunately, it is not an easy defense to predict, because there's 4 factors and there's 3 other things that you look at. And depending on which judge you get or what the judge may have even had for breakfast, it's very difficult to predict where is that line, what constitutes infringement and what constitutes fair use. So you always have these kind of back of the napkins. Well, if I create only one, and I sell one, I should be okay doing that because it's art. At that point, it's art, and as long as I make a lot of changes to it, or a certain amount of changes to it, that won't bother the companies. But when you get to the point when they start selling 50 or 100 or 200, then you have a product that might be infringing. And I think the trading card companies should be more aggressive pursuing these right now. just because you don't actually know where the dividing line is. Now, the Supreme Court actually does have a fair use case this year. It was already argued. It was a Andy Warhol case, Warhol Foundation case, where there was a photograph of Prince that Andy Warhol did his, kind of like Marilyn Monroe type paintings of that. And the photographer sued over that. At one party, the defendant or the plaintiff won at the district court, at the Court of Appeals. The other party won. Like, the factors didn't make any sense which way they were going for both sides. So both sides won. And now that's at the Supreme Court. And it's really a difficult subject. And it'll be interesting to see, will the Supreme Court clear it up or muddle it more? And so it's one thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with that.
Yeah. Well, and you even have lots of instances of the actual card companies themselves doing this. And I often wonder what happens in some of these cases. I'm sure a lot of the times it's sort of done, behind the doors and settlements and things like that. But, Topps, for instance, had their home field insert set that looked remarkably similar to the Panini Downtown insert set. And like even some of the Panini Downtown designs look remarkably similar to like the old school Topps Beam Team designs, things like that have gone on for quite a while. And I don't remember hearing too much hubbub about it in terms of, litigations happening in terms of public court over some of these things. So I'm sure a lot of that gets resolved, in closed doors and whatnot.
Yeah, so really those are fights over card design, and it's a really interesting area because it's a two-edged sword for whoever brings it and whoever loses. Because if you're a card company suing another card company, there was a great case. There was a Topps versus Upper Deck in 2010 or 2011. And in there, Topps sued Upper Deck over Upper Deck's OPC set, which was a almost complete knockoff of Topps 1975 design. And so Topps brought a lawsuit against them. And the lawsuit went back and forth for a little bit, but we didn't get a ruling on it, and it settled. And I think the real reason is because had Topps won, it would have shown that you get a lot of protections in card design. But it would have not only been a win for Topps, it would have been a win for the whole industry. Because then if Topps's designs are protected, well, then everybody's are protected. Now, had Topps lost, had Upper Deck won, because Upper Deck's arguments were, come on, it's a trading card. There's only a few ways that you can actually make this. You put the position player here, you put the picture here, you put the name of there's so many things that every card has. At some point, you just can't copyright everything that's there. Now, had Upper Deck won, it would have been a good win for Upper Deck in that one product. But then, if you could imagine, the 1975 Topps is one of Topps's, easiest, most recognizable card designs. If that's not protectable, then nobody's card designs are protectable. So that would be one of those things where if Upper Deck won, well, it lost also, because now none of its cards can ever be protected and you'll have free copying everywhere else. I think the industry has this equilibrium where it won't go after like ideas, and you can't copyright an idea. So the idea of a downtown card and the idea of a home field card are kind of, the same. It's like we're going to show pictures of the city painted in this kind of artistic kind of way. Kaboom cards, we're going to model, or, there's other companies that do the Kaboom type cards. And that's just, based off of comic books, what comic books have done. So there, you're really just going after ideas. If it's an idea, they tend to let it go. But if you're 1975 Topps, if you're 1952 Topps, if you're 1986 Topps, if you're something that people would recognize the card, then you get closer to, I think, potential litigation.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about like all the money that Upper Deck must have spent back in the day to get the Fleer license or get the copyrights protection on all the Fleer stuff, and so they were able to do Fleer insert designs and in particular PMG designs in a lot of their products now. But those are probably so very specific looking that other companies probably don't want to try and even come close to copying like a Fleer PMG or an old school Fleer, etched inserts like a jambalaya or something along those lines that are probably a little bit more specific, and you can probably fight those a little bit easier in court, right?
Right. Yeah. Like I don't think you're going to see another manufacturer do a 1986 Fleer design. I mean, that's, very recognizable as a Fleer product, as an Upper Deck product. Now, you won't see that from Topps. You won't see that from trading cards. You might see that from an artist or a knockoff artist. And that's really what I'd like to see the companies enforcing more. When you see artists designing their own versions of Michael Jordan cards, I would like to see the trading card companies enforcing their rights against those guys. And until at least the Supreme Court comes in on fair use and tells us where's the line for those.
So going from potential copyrighted cards on porn sites to card porn. Many people probably watching and listening to this are familiar with card porn. Thank you. Card porn has been brought up a lot recently, and there's a very specific litigation thing happening right now involving an individual investor, buyer, whatever you want to label him, and him trying to bring a suit, I guess. And I guess the motion, I believe, was specifically to Instagram to try and force Instagram to give away CardPorn's actual identity, I suppose. So this is a really fascinating case and could lead to all sorts of interesting things in the future in regards to how people probably want to try and perceive themselves on social media, and how they want to try and make sure that they aren't like trying to influence the card markets openly in that way, the same that a lot of people have been accused of lately. And so this one is very interesting in particular. Could you kind of explain in a little detail about what this is kind of about?
Sure. So what you have is there's a lawsuit against John Doe's, but it's really CardPorn, where CardPorn had some posts about a LeBron James rookie card with a patch in it that they were saying was, that's a swapped out patch. That's not the original patch. It's an altered card. There's, and they did some analysis. It was pictures of the card with a different.
It was a exquisite RPA, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And so the owner of that card at the time, I believe, had it up for auction with Golden. And the card was expected to sell around the $2 million mark. But because of CardPorn's followings, it's a rather large site, the auction was withdrawn. It was canceled. And so the owners of the card, I believe it's the two Spiegel brothers, they brought a lawsuit, and it's a John Doe lawsuit because they don't know who CardPorn is. And the first thing that they asked the court to do was, hey, we need to talk to Instagram. Instagram is where these posts occurred. We need to figure out everything that we can about this account and then backwards reverse engineer and find out who this person is, so we know who to serve for this lawsuit. And it is, like you said, it is something that could greatly affect the industry, because there is a number of sites or people that are out there that look for counterfeit cards or look for questionable cards, or even to the point of saying there are some suspect eBay sellers or suspect eBay buyers. Yeah. And they will go online and say, hey, stay away from these people or stay away from these cards. Sometimes they're probably right, but sometimes they're going to be wrong. And so this case, it's the first case that I've seen out there that might be the trailblazing case for, is there going to be the ability to police online for disparaging statements that are made, libelous statements that are made? And if so, what can you do? What can you say? And how can you protect yourself? So it's going to be a very interesting follow. One of the issues there will be, are the plaintiffs in that case public personalities? Because if they are, there's more leeway. you actually, in a case like that, for libel or disparagement, you have to show that there is malice, intended malice for these statements. And that's very difficult. I mean, someone has to have a grudge against the person. But if they're not public figures, then mistake, if this is not a reasonable mistake that was made by CardPorn, then that could be actionable. And they're seeking at least $2 million here, so it's definitely one to watch, and it's going to take forever, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, very very fascinating because this hobby, but almost any collectible hobby that you can think of, there are these sort of public figure watchdog personality types, either on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or wherever, that do this a lot. They call out, tomfoolery or whatever you want to call it in their particular genre. And I think back to something you brought up recently in your Twitter feed that happened about a year ago to this day, and it's actually very strange that it's already been a year. But the Logan Paul thing with the Pokemon case, which was initially called out online. I can't remember the name of the YouTuber that was making all those videos where he was going over all the evidence and speaking publicly like, no, this case I'm pretty sure is actually a forgery, despite what Baseball Card Exchange says about it or whatever. And it turns out he was right. And of course they did the very public unboxing of that case that did turn out to be a bunch of G.I. Joe packs, and probably gave us the best moments of the entire of all the YouTube videos that came out last year. That was probably by far still the best one that occurred. So yeah, it'd be interesting going forward in terms of people who try and do that, because people care about whatever hobby or whatever investment or whatever genre that they're talking about with their public sites or social media or whatever. But yeah, will they be liable for saying such things especially if they do turn out to be incorrect in some cases?
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting to see too. And I mean, I think there is a potential middle ground for this lawsuit. Well, I think there's a good chance it'll go all the way, depending what all the way means for it. I mean, there is some reputation that could be repaired for the card. If the card is not altered, or if it's potentially altered by Upper Deck, I mean, it's such a weird story to see what's happening. But if that card is still authentic, whatever that ends up being, it could be repaired in the eyes of the public, get back on an auction block, and then go and then be sold. And heck, with a lawsuit tacked on it and proving that it might be a legitimate card, may make the value go up even more, because I don't know how many of those RPA cards, if there's like 97 of them or however many of those cards there are. Well, this is the one that everybody will remember.
Yep, very true. And in a way, in a way, bringing these things to the light in the public almost ensures that the people involved with this don't lose out on any money whatsoever, or they have the potential to almost make it twice, 2 times, or 3 times as much more valuable than what it initially was because of the public light on it. And so that makes you go, well, then who wouldn't do that then in the future? Who wouldn't bring up cases? I don't know. Or who wouldn't take the risk? Like, who wouldn't go ahead and take the risk of spending a couple $1 million if they have that kind of money? Like, once again, I think about the Logan Paul thing. He didn't risk anything doing that, obviously. Like, he didn't lose out on any money. Not only did he have an agreement in place with somebody that he trusted in terms of where he actually bought that case from, but based off of the millions of views that his YouTube channel got and the sponsorship that he received for that particular video, there was no way that he was going to wind up losing any money off of that anyway. And so why not take the risk? Yeah. And if he wanted to, why not take it to a fight in the courts, which he never did, because like I said, I don't think there's anything for him to fight about, because I think he got his money back initially. But there are other people involved in that still, I mean, would there be some sort of reason behind taking that to court, especially if there was a precedent like what might happen with this CardPorn case potentially.
Yeah. No, and I think at some point, and I'm surprised there hasn't been a lawsuit there. It's because I've been monitoring that, because at some point the buck's going to stop somewhere. I mean, maybe this guy knows this guy and felt bad for this guy, so they can all reimburse each other. But at some point, there's a bad actor that put this put these impels in the GI Joe impels in there and sold it. And so I'm waiting whether it'll be civil or criminal. I'm still waiting to see what happens with that. But I still think Logan Paul, and I don't know if he did. I've only watched one of his videos, and that was the one I watched, and it was great. I should watch more of his. But I'm surprised he didn't take all those GI Joe packs and sell them off, because those are actually worth a lot of money too. So.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. If somebody had it on eBay, these are the actual GI Joe packs that Logan Paul pulled in his video. They would go for a lot of money. And you're right. I've been thinking
he could sign those and sell those, and it'd be great. Give it to charity.
Oh boy. And you're right too. I've been kind of thinking a lot about that recently too. Like, it didn't seem like there was really much actual fallout from that. Like, when I first watched it a year ago, I was thinking that was going to be a huge deal, and I thought it was going to be a huge deal for BBCE. I thought it was going to be a huge deal for whoever wound up being sort of the originator in terms of the chain of command that wound up getting that case into Logan Paul's hands. And yeah, I don't think really anything has come about it since it happened over a year ago.
No, yeah, not that at least I tend to try to stay in the courts and what the court filed documents are. I don't look at too many message boards and see what people are saying or what the rumor mills are. I like to stick with the cold hard facts that are out there, or the papers that are out there, and I haven't seen anything. And it is funny because like I said, every morning I start off, I look at all the dockets that are out there. And one thing I do is I look at all the new cases against all the players in the industry, so Topps, Upper Deck, Panini, everybody else. And after this happened, I added Baseball Card Exchange to that list. And it's been the most boring docket I've ever added, because every time I look, nothing's happened. So, eventually I'll probably remove it because I'm getting too many at this point. I guess nothing's happened yet, but I think it will at some point.
Well, they also had that weird thing that happened at the National, where they had that 86 clear box that was opened up in front of everybody at the National, and people questioned the actual authenticity of it because of how the correlation came out with all the packs that they opened up. So I'm a little surprised that BBC has kind of.
I think the numbers were. Yeah, I think those numbers were sequential. If I remember.
Literally, yeah.
So that's a little suspect.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I'm a little surprised they've kind of gone unscathed, and people obviously. I still know a lot of dealers and a lot of people that trust them completely and still deal with them, obviously, and and I understand it, because they've still been sort of the industry standard for quite a long time. It would probably take a lot for somebody who's sort of the top dog to sort of lose that standing. But yeah, I'm still a little surprised about that. But I guess at the very least, we will always have the Steve Hart moment from that video where he just sits there and just says, "We were duped. We were duped." Best moment ever. No.
Yeah. Everybody makes mistakes. I felt really bad for him, but you took that risk being on video there. It's one of the things that they teach you when you're a litigator is when you're in any cases that have science or where you want to do a live demonstration in court. Don't do it. No matter what happens, don't do a live demonstration in court, because it can always backfire. And I would put that as the, maybe let them open it up and then we'll comment later by letter. Don't be in the room, because, when all the blood drains from your face and you're like, we were duped, that's all anyone's going to remember.
And yep, that's all everyone did remember, pretty much. It's still one of a lot of people's favorite memes or gifs or whatever. So so there has been a lot over the past year, as you said earlier. Yeah, 2022. There are a lot of things that seem to be brought up with court documents and things of that nature. What are some of the other things that you've been following here lately that have been really interesting to you, or wanted to make sure to kind of bring up? Yeah, because there's been a lot. It's hard to keep track of everything, but there have been a lot of interesting things that have happened for sure, it seems like.
Yeah, I think the biggest case out there that probably the most eyeballs are on it is the Panini Redemption case. That whether Panini's redemptions, the way that they've handled them, is legal or not. And there's been a long running lawsuit that's been pending in Texas. And I thought we were going to get a trial date this year. I think it was set for trial in June. And the case, Panini had been winning a lot of that case. They not got the contract claims knocked out. The only thing that was left was consumer fraud. And it was the plaintiff's position that when we get a redemption, we want that card. That is an IOU for that card. We don't want substitutions. We don't want anything else. And during the course of discovery, to come to find out that in certain years, Panini wasn't fulfilling 16 to 25% of the redemptions. So, in some of those bad years, you had a 1 in 4 chance of not getting that card. And despite that, the card just says, congratulations, you won whatever this card's going to be. And that's where the problem came. Had it said, hey, congratulations, you have a 75% chance of getting this card or something else, there wouldn't be a lawsuit ongoing. But because the card, as the plaintiffs are saying, because when you look at that card, your first thought is, I am getting that card. I'm not going to get a substitution, or there's not a significant risk of a substitution. I should, get that card or be compensated. So that's what was set to go to trial this summer. But at the end of the year, Panini got a victory where the case will no longer be a class action. Only a judge can decide if a case is going to be a class action or not. And this judge, it's difficult to see what her reasoning was, but she decided that there was not sufficient similarity from all the potential plaintiffs that you could have one lawsuit that would decide it for everybody. Her decision basically said, everybody who thinks they've been harmed by the Panini program, you have to bring your own lawsuits. So it's a win by Panini in that this trial that's going forward, if it goes forward, is going to be much smaller. It's going to be on 5 cards rather than 5,000, 500,000, whatever the numbers might be. But it's still a win for the plaintiffs in that case because you get that trial. And if they do win, if they do go to trial, if the plaintiffs do win that trial, well, then it opens the floodgates. Then anybody who has cards from whatever years are at issue here could potentially bring their own cases in, small claims court, or if the cards are sufficiently big, in, federal court or state court, and point to the precedent. So that's what I've been looking at. The decision on whether it'll be a class action or not is up on appeal right now. And I think because of that, it's probably going to delay the actual trial. But I really am still hopeful that 4 months from now, we'll be selecting a jury and this issue will be going forward, because there's a lot of redemptions out there and there's a lot of people that care about this case.
Well, yeah. And as you said, the potential ramifications of something like this going forward with products, and just thinking about how they'll do redemptions going forward, and will they just do redemptions as an ambiguous thing going forward? And they've done similar stuff before, like with Panini points that everyone absolutely hated, and hopefully those don't come back or come back in a big way. And I know some people would say, well, we want to get rid of all redemptions, because we hate redemptions anyway. It's like, yeah, but unfortunately, redemptions kind of have to happen in this industry. Panini and Leaf and eventually Fanatics just won't be able to fill products with autographs unless people are willing to go back to like the late 90s, early 2000s, where you only pulled like one autograph for every 10 or 12 boxes that you opened, which was great for the value of those things and the rarity for those cards. But people are so used to having those 1 or 2 autographs per box or whatever it is nowadays for or the high end products. Obviously, you've got like 5 or 6 or whatever. I mean, that would really change the game if if these court cases actually wind up going against these card companies, and maybe makes them rethink doing redemptions at all going forward.
Yeah, and really, all they need to do is truth in advertising. I mean, if I don't think a card company would want to do it, but if they say, hey, and last year we only fulfilled 60% of these, so that's about your odds of getting this redemption fulfilled, they'll be fine, because again, it's coming down to consumer fraud and the representations that are made. But it kind of ties together with what Leaf did with CD Lamb. You have, the problem really isn't the card companies; it's the athletes. They're just not signing on time, and we get it. They're busy. You got to stay in shape. You got to learn all the plays. You got to do whatever it is. It's a very big time commitment being a professional athlete. And so I think even the consumers will give athletes and card companies a little bit of leeway, but it's just the big offenders, the longtime offenders, where it's outstanding for a year, 2 years. The trading card companies should be pressing back because they're the ones that have the contracts with the athletes. And those contracts are what's being breached, actually. The athletes aren't fulfilling their terms of, the terms of the contract. So there is, the middle ground is, hey, have truth in advertising, and trading card companies push harder on the athletes. And I think that would speed everything up. But trading card companies, except for Leaf, are notoriously wimpy. They won't do that. And they'd rather, have these long lawsuits go on forever than actually, make actual disclosures to consumers and say, hey, here's actually what's going on behind the scenes. Just keep buying our stuff. So.
True. I do agree. Like if it forces the card companies to be more transparent, that will be a great thing, because they have been kind of skirting the line in terms of like their transparency and their verbiage on certain things. People will put in a redemption and they won't hear back from the company for like over a year, 2 years sometimes, and there's no status update on that card or anything, and no communication. And so people are waiting for a long time, and it's very, very frustrating. And then also there's sort of the way that Panini is now doing their memorabilia pieces, and how they're sort of towing that line of making them so generic, and the verbiage so just like, well, this piece isn't guaranteed to actually come from a very specific player or event or whatever. It's like, okay, so who knows where it comes from then, and who knows what you're actually getting with some of these memorabilia pieces or redemptions or whatever. And it goes back, and there's been a lot of people now like going back and ripping out memorabilia pieces from their cards and showing that, it looks like on the back of this is actually labeled to be from a different player completely. And so like, where do we hold these companies accountable when it comes to things like that, when we are spending a ton of money on these products, and we're getting nothing out of some of these? Like, we're getting redemptions that don't get redeemed, and we're getting memorabilia pieces that have really nothing to do with the actual athlete that it says it's associated with or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's most recently we've seen the logo, or the warning that the piece that's attached here can't, it doesn't line up with any potential game, season, or player. That's the new addition that's been there, is or player. And really, unfortunately, when you're looking at it as a consumer fraud or breach of contract type area, if the trading card company puts or player on there, well, you know what you're getting. Unfortunately, you're getting a piece of fabric that could come from Dick's Sporting Goods. They just went there, cut it up, put it in there. I mean, it says what's there on the box. Where the card companies get in trouble is where if they're implying it's something other than what it is. And I saw the cards that everybody was cutting up for Panini, and pulling out allegedly pulling out the patches and saying they don't line up. And so I did my own experiment. I ordered one of those cards, got it for $5, came, cut it up, and mine lined up. So, I wasn't able to go, oh, hey, look, it doesn't line up. So at least some of them do line up. But if the card said, or, doesn't correspond to any particular player on the back, even if on the inside it's a different player in there, then the company's okay. It's when it doesn't have that warning, where it doesn't imply that it's not this potential player. by saying it's not from any particular game or any particular season, the implication is still there that it is the same player. So when a trading card company has that or player there, they're probably fine. It's when you have the swap patches in there and it doesn't say or player. That's where you have the potential issue there. But when Panini has or player on there, the only recourse that we have as consumers is don't spend your money there. That's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like companies like Panini have just gotten smarter in terms of their verbiage, and it's no longer a legal matter in that case. Unfortunately, it's just more of you gotta know what you're getting into when you're buying these products now, or when you're getting into these breaks or whatever you're doing in the hobby. That, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff, even stuff in their high end products like National Treasures has that verbiage on it, and so I don't understand why people are spending thousands of dollars for cards that have a memorabilia piece that can literally be from anywhere. And like I said, literally from a retail store, probably. I personally don't get that.
And it's just so disappointing because because really at that point, it's what are you buying? And I think as consumers, we're slaves to the company because they have the exclusive license. Where else are you going to get the logo, the player name, the team logo, the team name, and a fabric of the same uniform? They're the only game in town that can do that. So it's ultimately disappointing. But if consumers want change, unfortunately, you have to stop buying.
Yes, stop buying and probably stop suing, because I don't think a lot of the suing that's going on is probably going to lead to very much, unfortunately, because, like you said, card companies have been fighting these type of lawsuits for a long time. And whether it's directly from the consumers or just amongst each other, and they have lawyers, like you wouldn't believe, probably on their payroll that have been doing this for a long time. So, yeah, it's probably not going to lead to very much, although we'll see. We'll see with this Panini Redemption thing in particular, what it might lead to, yeah.
And you'd be surprised. It actually does lead to changes. Maybe the plaintiff doesn't win, but the terms of service for Panini has changed many times during this lawsuit. So, and again, it's probably not what the consumer wants, but you are actually getting that full disclosure. Now you're getting away from potential consumer fraud claims. You're getting to truth in advertising. And unfortunately, you're learning the product kind of sucks. But so you do actually, with the lawsuits themselves, it does change the behavior of the card companies. It probably just doesn't get anybody rich.
Yeah. All right. So was there anything else you want to make sure to mention? Anything else? Yeah, you're following, or just make sure to mention things that you're beyond just being on Twitter. Are there other things that you're doing or on regularly, whether it's social media or any other type of platform where you're going on and talking about these things on a regular basis?
Yeah, Twitter seems to be where I am the most. Whenever I get a chance or the opportunity, I do like to jump on podcasts and things like that to talk about the issues. But if anybody ever has any questions about or interest in the legal issues surrounding cards, just come check me out on Twitter at Paul_Lesko, and I've probably covered it at some time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to come do this tonight. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I can't wait to see more updates on these cases that you're following in the future. It's very, very interesting.
No, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this.